Okay, great. Well, why don't we get started then? There are two matters up tonight. The first is a rear addition and garage reconstruction. I hope I've summarized that correctly at 3528 Ordway Street. The applicants being Jeff Griffiths and Claire Block. And then the second matter that we're having a presentation on tonight is the Cleveland Park Congregational Church at 3400 Lowell Street. And Lou, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Belodemus or Balademus?
Valadimus, good try.
Great. Okay. We'll be presenting on behalf of the church, and it's primarily the construction of an accessible ramp and reconfiguration of stairs. So, Mr. Kaplan, you're here, right?
Yes. Hi. Good evening.
So really the way we'll do it is if you would like to present for the application, which I know you've filed at HPRB and gotten some comments on, and then if the applicants then want to say anything, or we could do it in reverse order, and then there will be questions from commissioners and then from the community.
Okay, great.
And if you would like to share your screen, we'll set you up for that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I made you a co-host, so you should see the share screen button there at the bottom now.
Okay.
As you're setting up, I just want to note as well that at ANC committee meetings, these are really to present information and get questions answered, and then obviously for members of the public to be informed and ask questions. No decisions are made at these committee meetings, but it does then inform possible action that the ANC will take later on.
Okay. Understood.
And we can see your screen, so you can go ahead.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name, as you heard, is David Kaplan, and I'm an architect representing the owners of this project at 3525 Ordway Street Northwest, which is a single-family detached home with the contributing original portion having been built in 1934 by the home builder A.J. Dinger and designed by architects Dillon and Abel in the colonial farmhouse style. The original structure has brick sides and a quarry stone front facade coined together at the front outside corners. The front entrance has a covered colonial concrete porch with a wood frame standing seam metal shed roof. The first rear addition was done in the 80s, I think successfully mirroring the original three-story gabled end expression. And why don't I actually jump to a sheet that you can see for that. Which is down here towards the lower left with the red dot. I think the 80s edition successfully mirrors the original three-story gabled end expression with a setback two-story facade. And then in 2010, a second addition was done to the original roof, which added a rear shed dormer nearly the full width of the house to create more windows, natural light, and expand the bedrooms and storage on the third level. You can see up here in the upper left, this is kind of an aerial 3D view showing the house in context and the neighbors. And then down here on the bottom of the page, you can see the house with the red dot is the lot in question, lot 113, 3525 Ordway. And then to the left and right are the neighboring properties from the front. However, this latest project and presentation before you aims primarily to replace the existing deteriorating deck at the rear with a slightly deeper screened-in covered deck entirely to the rear of the existing 80s addition. And there's also a contiguous expanded uncovered deck with replacement stairs down to the rear grade. From pedestrian, it also shows the raise of the existing original but non-contributing brick garage, which abuts the alleyway, and that's to be replaced with a slightly wider brick 2-car single-story garage. From a pedestrian experience, the new replacement deck and the majority of the project will only be visible from the rear within the confines of the yard or from an elevated perspective within an immediate neighboring property. And from the alley, a pedestrian might be able to marginally see the roof of their covered deck over the top edge of the fence. The rear alley-facing facade of the new garage will definitely be visible from the alley, of course. So just to run through the presentation after kind of setting up that overview, the view on the top right of the screen is elevated from the alley, showing the garage replaced with the new proposed garage and the covered deck and uncovered deck to the right of that. Behind that is the gabled end of the kind of 2.5, 3-story expression of the original of the existing addition of the 80s, and then that kind of setback portion also with a shed roof, and then above that is the third addition up on the original rear roof of the existing original house. And then there's also some other context images of other properties along Ordway Street, which are on this page. And then going down to this page, you can see the existing and the proposed site plan diagrams right next to each other. The rightmost is as it is now with the original garage, slightly smaller footprint, and existing deck, also slightly smaller footprint than what's being proposed. And in the middle of the page is the proposed site plan diagram with all of the new work highlighted in red. And then on the left side of the page shows the rear alley existing garage, where you can kind of, if you're standing on the far edge of the alley, you can kind of peek over and see the upper portions of the existing house. And then from within the rear yard, this is a view showing the existing deteriorating deck and the 80s addition. And then down below that is a picture from the street, from the sidewalk, showing the existing front of the house. And as you can see, it's very difficult to see into the backyard. The next page shows some orthographic views of the original on the top right, and then the proposed on the bottom right. And then the context are satellite images and diagrams, you know, to the left of the page. The bottom leftmost showing other structures at different heights and kind of relative to each other in terms of how much into the rear yard they go compared to lot 113, where the proposed project is. And the following pages show some 3D views of the proposed project, as well as existing and proposed elevations next to each other, along with kind of a general description of each of the things that are proposed to be done. The major things we already talked about, and some of the minor things are mostly replacing windows and the front door. The windows on the original structure are all to be replaced in kind with colonial style 6/6s. And then on the 80s edition, there's kind of a mix right now of casement and 6/0s in terms of mullion patterns. And the plan is to kind of clean that up to all be 6/0s, which I think makes a nice transition from the original colonial style 6/6s to the newer edition 6/0s. And you can see that in the elevations and the 3D images here. The roof of the proposed covered deck portion as I work my way into, oh yeah, the east elevation on the bottom left is a good place to look at this. Um, I think, you know, from a kind of comparative perspective, we have the original shed roof of and form of the front of the house, and then we're somewhat mimicking that to the rear in the cover deck, but also working with the shed roofs that were added on later at the two previous additions. So we're kind of stepping down and working our way with a shed roof to the rear as we go back. And then the garage, as we get to that elevation, kind of turns and faces that the opposite way, which I'm jumping out a little bit to show you, but the outline in red is that garage form relative to what's existing. So I'll just jump back up here for a second, just to keep running through the elevations. You can see the north elevation is on the leftmost side. It shows all of the different windows that are being replaced. The siding is also being replaced due to moisture issues over the years and deterioration of the siding. And on the front of the house, again, just replacement in kind of existing windows. Same on the west and east. And then some 3D images and views specifically of the covered and uncovered decks, the roof with skylights, and the view from underneath. And then again, back to the garage study. Lot 114 is the garage, is the property directly next door to the east. And then the existing garage, as you can see, it's original. It's deteriorating quite a bit. It's really industrial as it looks, but it's also non-contributing. And then a diagram showing the original versus the proposed outlines. And then a little bit of detail on the garage, adding a little bit of ornament, some banding, canopies, and you know, it mostly opens up to the inside of the yard and responds back to that shed roof of the covered deck. And then the last couple of pages here are about the hardscape landscape scope, which is again mostly cleaning up deteriorating hardscape areas on the side yards, the rear yard, lowering the area directly under the deck, and creating some site walls to help with the transitions in grade, and you know, new planting, new fences, and working our way up to create a kind of a more accessible, you know, stepped area along the sides for maintenance and for access, and then also for better screening of the trash area, which is in the front to the bottom right of the existing porch. And the last couple images shows, you know, some of those existing conditions and the deterioration, and some proposed images of what some of those elements can look like, you know, such as the fencing and the front pass, and the rear fencing. And then just outside of historic review, the project is, you know, as a matter of right. There's no special zoning variances that are being sought. And as you mentioned, Rick, the design has initially been reviewed by HPO. They voiced general support for the project, and they had some minor comments which were addressed in this presentation, mainly about, you know, kind of massaging that roof of the covered deck making the cornices a little bit thinner. And that's mostly it.
Okay, well, thanks very much, David. First, I'll see if other commissioners have questions, and then I have a couple. Commissioner Pagets?
Well, let Swale go first since it's in his SMD, right?
No,
Uh,
it's Rick's SMD, but you should go first. You're the chair.
No, you're the co-chair of this committee. You go first.
I
Please.
insist.
This is a very well done presentation, and I appreciate it. It has all of the pieces I usually find missing there, so that's awesome. And thank you. And thank you for your time at this, to the applicant and to David for coming to present. I just have a question about and maybe this was included and the font was just too small for my old eyes. Why is this being reviewed in front of HPRB? Because this doesn't seem to be a large rear addition of more than 250 square feet in footprint or 500 square feet on 2 or more levels. So, because you're kind of almost replacing in kind a lot of what was there. So if you can elaborate as to why we're even reviewing this, that would be helpful. In addition, sorry, I was on mute. Which part?
So I don't believe it's being reviewed in full by HPRB, just by HPO staff.
Well, I mean, that as part of that is HPO. Why are they?
Can I jump in just because it's, I think because we're a contributing structure in the historic district, that sort of elevates it to a different level. I'm happy to not have to go, but I think also that we're taking down the garage. We're not replacing the garage brick by brick because it's so falling apart, that we're taking it down. And I think without historic review, we would not be able to do that. And I will say, as long as I'm here, thank you to everyone for taking the time to look at this. And especially if it turns out to not be necessary. But, you know, I bought this house 25 years ago. And when I bought it, the garage conveyed as is, and I never did anything to it. Except take out the chicken coop that was in there. And I don't know, it was just too busy with kids and I didn't ever do anything. So now it's time. Now that we have, you know, cars that we want to plug in and, you know, bring it to life and stop looking at that ugly thing from our kitchen window.
And I appreciate that. And that was going to be my next question was, why is the garage at all under any kind of review? Because that is visible only from the alley, which is not a street. And apparently your kitchen, which that shouldn't fall into a purview of a citywide review, right?
Right. Well,
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, good question. Why? David, do you have more? I mean, does anyone want to tell us that we should just call it a day and
I think
take
in
it
order
away from the HBO? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to get a raised permit within the historic district, they're going to want to, you know, make sure that everyone's signed off on it, even though it's not a non-contributing structure.
The garage is non-contributing.
Yeah, the garage is a non-contributing structure, but it is a structure within the historic district, and so is the project. So I think for those reasons alone, it garners that attention.
Yeah, that seems right to me. Swally?
I had the exact same question as Commissioner Pagets. I want to apologize that you have to spend time with us. I think this should just be approved. You know, I don't see anything here that we should be commenting about. I just wanted to put that comment on the record and just say I completely agree with Commissioner Pagets. I obviously appreciate you all coming to us. It's always great to like talk to community members and like, you know, see all your wonderful homes. So excited for your EVs and all that stuff. But yeah, I think this is it was a great presentation. It's a wonderful project. thank you for being members of the neighborhood, and thank you for showing up.
Thank you. That's very nice. All right, well, I second that. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Well, you tell us what's next, I guess, and if there are
Sure.
more questions but just generally in what we should expect, if anything, from the ANC going forward. You know, I know the Cleveland Park Historic Society is meeting, and we're meant to go speak to them on Monday next week. And then we're hoping to get on the HPRB calendar if we need to, hopefully the consent calendar.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
do want to clarify one thing. You know, we're just giving individual opinions right now as commissioners. And we can't really make any decisions at this meeting. And this isn't like Commissioner Nash's SMD, but I did want to make that comment because I do think you know, at least from my personal view, I don't see anything wrong with this. And again, this is not a decision yet. The whole vote still needs to happen at our full meeting, I guess. But like Commissioner Pagets, I'm expressing my dismay that you know, we even have to go through this.
So if I could just ask a question, which is, have you shared the plans and spoken with your adjacent neighbors and rear neighbors?
Yeah, we have with our immediate neighbors, two on each side. So because they're all friends, but and they are all enthusiastic about it. They love. It was a little bit hard to see that love what we're thinking of on the fence, and everybody agrees it's a big improvement. On the rear neighbors, I put letters in through the mail slots of our rear neighbors, and we heard back from one of them who also was supportive and just had a question about construction or a concern about making sure that during construction, the alley would be, you know, accessible. And so I told him for sure we would work with him and make sure that it was.
Okay, great. And in David Kaplan, I heard you said as well that HPO staff had weighed in with a few comments, not terribly significant ones, and those had been addressed as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, you know, from my standpoint, you know, I think these plans are quite good, and you know, I appreciate the clarity of the presentation. I see one commissioner's hand is up, Adam Prinzo, and then we'll just see if any members of the community are here and want to speak to it. Adam?
Thanks, Rick. I just wanted to second everything that Janelle and Swale said, and I'd like to reiterate what I said in our last meeting. This is fully in the backyard from what I can tell. Now, granted, I am a little blind, but from what I can tell, it's in the backyard. And unless you want to invite me over for a barbecue, I'm never going to see it. So in my opinion, it's all fine. I'd like Swale apologize that you have to open up your home in this manner to us.
Are there members of the community or others who would like to have a question or speak about this project?
You may unmute. Well, you might not be able to unmute, but I'm looking at cameras. I don't see anything, and I do not see anything in the chat either, Commissioner Nash.
Okay, great. Well, Claire, you asked about next steps. You know, what I anticipate is that we will have a resolution, given that we have not heard any thing negative from any members in the community, and given the reaction tonight, I think it will be a resolution in support. And you know, as you say, my expectation is that the staff would try to put it on consent calendar unless there are community members who want to weigh in.
Great. And so if at your next meeting, do we show up to present to the other commissioners and the rest of the community, or how does that work?
So at this point, I anticipate it's going to be on consent. I think it would be good just to dial in, but if it's on consent, then it would be handled at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And thanks everybody for taking the time.
No, thank you. And again, to Mr. Kaplan, thank you for this very clear and informative presentation.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And to Commissioner Prinzo, is that who it is? You're welcome to come over for a beer. Just BYOB. And
Thank you.
you can come. It's all done.
You need to say that after the vote, not before it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Okay, next up is the Cleveland Park Congregational Church. And I know the architect is going to speak. Will there be other members of the church or others speaking on behalf of the church in addition to the architect?
Rick, we are out in force tonight, yes.
Okay. All right, well then, without sort of taking further time, you're welcome to share your screen as well.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to introduce myself. I'm a native Washingtonian. I have been in practice for 36 years here. I used to live in Cleveland Park. My first apartment was behind the Uptown Theater. And joining us from the church are Pastor Ellen Jennings, Dr. Mark Turner, who is the chair of the Board of Trustees, Serena Wiltshire, who is the Building and Grounds Committee chair, and I've got my partner, Vina Shasavarian, and Pierre Lazar is our project architect for the job. Let's get to the share. Okay. Church is at the corner of 34th and Lowell, catty corner from Thomas Eaton, and is obviously a contributing resource. Church was built in 1923, and it replaced an older, what was termed a temporary church, prefab almost building that they purchased in 1918 and erected in 1918. And then they bought the adjacent land and built the masonry church within 5 years, and I guess abandoned the old church at that point. We think this photo shows everybody making that transition, on opening day into the church. You can see the city sidewalk is in, but the approaches haven't been complete to the church. And looks like they're basically walking where we're going to be proposing to put this ramp. The church has been in continuous use by the same congregation for all 100 years. And this project is, sort of the extension of the life of the church. Original features all remain, except that this wing, the parlor wing, if you look back in this photo, originally was an open porch, and then was at some point enclosed. The church offices are either side of that. So you got main sanctuary and then parlor, what was termed the parlor group meeting hall on the side there. I think various groups in the community have used that space for meeting, including the Historical Society before COVID. The front yard is elevated from the street, as is common in the district. You'll note that the terrace stone, or the stone on the garden wall, is actually a different stone than it was on the building. It's more rectilinear and smaller than the more boulder-like stone. Church was designed by Clarence Lowell Harding, all names, who graduated high school in DC, but apparently did not attend architecture school. He was active in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and designed over 200 buildings. I don't know if there are any architects on the committee, but it was funny. We found that his DC license number was 44. This project is intended to meet the accessibility needs of the church. Right now, there's an old lift in the stairwell. When you go inside this door, I do not have interior photos in the presentation, but it's slow, loud. It has the capacity of one person, and it doesn't meet the inclusivity and equal access that the church wants to provide to their community. Continue through here. So We're going to be demoing the concrete steps that are there. Cheek walls remain. We're not touching the facade in any way. And that's will happen at both entries. The concrete will be removed here as well. Garden wall will remain. A lot of landscaping will be redone. Just more general photos showing the difference in stone here. These window wells are behind these hedges. Some of you might be familiar with Kinderhouse, who is a tenant in the building, occupies the basement, and is a major source of funding for the revenue for the church. And we need to maintain daylight to these windows. So the new ramp is going to be where this hedge is, essentially. In the background here, you can see a gas meter, a pretty large gas meter that we need to maintain as well. We don't want to have the expense of basically redoing the service if we have to move that. The valve is here, so we'd have to tear up the street and relocate the service if we were impacting this. Existing conditions might be hard to see, but the property line is back of the garden wall along the sidewalk, about 6 or 7 feet back of the sidewalk. So we'll be getting both a DOB permit and a public space permit. This is a concept that the church pursued before COVID in 1999, presented it to the Historical Society, who approved it unanimously. And we were hired last year to advance this concept through approval and construction. It's a little different than what we ended up with. We feel that we've refined it. It added some piers out in front. I mean, other than that, it didn't have sufficient run on the ramp. So we had to push this section of ramp a little farther back towards the church in line with the rest of the ramp. They had planned sort of a jog here. This didn't work for us. We also brought the starting point of the ramp in closer. Just a demo plan, 3D rendering of what we're talking about. So the steps basically get pushed out to be a single run instead of a broken run on this side. That allows us to put the ramp in front of the cheek wall. We're basically squeezed between the gas meter that I showed you, the cheek wall, and how many risers we need to get in to make the elevation change. We've massaged grade enough that we don't need to have guardrails along the steps themselves. Just the handrail, light handrail that we would do similar to the handrail that's there. But we do need to have a guardrail on the back side of the ramp because of that, the higher drop off to the window wells on that side. But the plan is for landscaping to happen in front of here, just as the hedge is now. We're pulling that forward, and that'll hide that heavy rail later on. So street view, we want to do the sidewalls of the new steps and ramp in a stone matching the garden wall, not matching the church, to make that distinct and make it feel more part of the landscape than the church, and let the church structure be its own period. View from the other end, approaching. The ramps themselves will be concrete with concrete curbs, and then the steps and landings will be in flagstone. Lighting, we're proposing bollards that will be hidden by landscaping, just simple bollards. I think we have a total of 8 with just downward lighting on the ramps and the stairs. In this view, that sort of clarifies: yellow is concrete, green is flagstone, and the blue are the new foundation walls with the garden stone. This run of steps we're holding back behind the property line here. So the DDOT is only looking at those three little components there. Just the plan showing the paving, and then architectural drawings following that. We've got some pretty deep excavations. Those window wells, we assume, are as deep as the church foundations, and we might need to avoid impacting those foundations. So we might have to dig fairly deep on these walls. And this kind of shows the grade change that we're achieving to not have the big drop off here. So it's 1.5 feet or so of fill up into that inside corner. And then the rest are just architectural details. In terms of the process, we have submitted to HPRB. We hope to be on the schedule for the 28th if that meeting happens. I understand they don't have a quorum yet. We've posted the site, notified adjacent and confronting neighbors by registered mail. We've met with Ann Brockett, who's been assigned. Apparently Todd's workload was too much, so she's going to be responsible for the project. We met with her last Wednesday. That was her first view of the project, walked her through existing conditions and the proposal and the interior. She feels it's premature for her to speak about how she might, what she might put in her staff report. The goal is to do demolition in August. Kinderhouse is closed in August, and the church and Kinderhouse have agreed to limit noise and activity and need to do the project in August. So we're trying to be aggressive here and get it through. If it doesn't happen, then it's going to probably have to wait another year. So we hope to get approval at the end of March, do construction drawings in April, get approvals May and June, and then be ready to go in August. And happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. Does anyone from the church wish to speak as well?
Hi, I'm Mark Turner. I'm chair of the board of trustees, and our congregation is a very inclusive one. And in fact, our motto is whoever you are and wherever you are in life's journey, you're welcome here. And that's our intention, is to make it as welcoming for people with disabilities as we possibly can, and allow them to come on into church, with their families. And from a practical standpoint, I'm not sure if Lou mentioned, but the parlor steps need to be reconstructed. They intermittently leak and cause flooding down into the basement. So that's something we have to do as well. So we looked at many other proposals back in 2019, 2020, and using some folks that were subject matter experts in our church, as well as having meetings with people who are disabled. Of those, this layout was the one that they chose as the best. And likewise, it was affirmed by the entire congregation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Is anyone else from the church?
Yes. Yeah, I'm Reverend Ellen Jennings, and I've been pastor at the church for 13 years. And this has been a long work in progress starting pre-COVID. We had a major capital campaign where we have raised close to $1 million for this and other accessibility modifications to the church, along with some major plumbing renovations to the basement of this 100-year-old building. And the way that things are currently configured, if you are an individual who is using a wheelchair or is not able to navigate the steps up to our parlor door or sanctuary door, you have to come in the daycare door at the 34th Street side, walk through the daycare classrooms, go over to the really horrendous single elevator at the bottom of the stairs, and then ride the elevator up. That's how you get into our church. And so our goal is to have a hospitable and accessible way that everybody can, as we say, and as our disability consultants advised, come in through the same door.
Thanks very much. Anyone else from the church? And then we'll go to questions.
Ellen and Mark have said everything I would say. I don't want to take any more time, so you can go on.
Okay. If I could maybe just take the prerogative of the first couple of questions. So the first, I had a question on a couple of the slides, or I should say, slide 18, and then I think slide 21, just the elevations. Yeah, so on this slide here, the ramp that extends sort of west and then turns north of the parlor. It looks like from that, and I think the slide afterwards, that the landscape is graded then to sort of meet that ramp, or is that ramp going to be elevated off the ground?
We've got about a foot of fill here for that rise, and then maybe not much more here, a foot and a half here, and a little bit more here. So it's following grade here.
Okay.
A little bit of a drop off on the backside.
But in the front, the grade will be graded to meet the ramp, so you won't have a wall there, right?
Right.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, there are some, mature plantings, including at least one pine tree on the, I guess.
There's a cedar on this corner.
And is the plan to save that? The
plan is to save it. I got a lecture from the lady who planted it yesterday at church. And she says she planted it 28 years ago. She says if she was doing it now, she'd pick a different tree because it's non-native. But the goal is going to be to keep it. We'll have to trim some of the lower branches because you'll be hitting your head where the ramp is. We're impacting the root zone, nominally maybe 25% of the root zone. So we'll have to see how it does, but the plan is to keep it.
We have a very avid gardening team that has a lot of ideas about how to landscape with this.
Yeah, I often see the volunteers out there on weekends.
I've kind of minimized the landscaping here in order to show the physical improvements that we're proposing. The plan is to do more landscaping than this. And
since the ramp is set toward Lowell Street from the church, both to preserve the window and light, and also because of the gas meter, are you going to be able to keep some of the existing plantings that are against the church, or are those going to come out?
They are basically where the ramp is. That whole hedge is going to have to come out.
Got it.
Yeah, and it's also non-native. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Well, at least two commissioners have their hands raised, Commissioner Siddiqui and Commissioner Pagets.
Yeah. First, thank you so much again for coming to our meeting. And thank you for what you do for the community. Your church is absolutely beautiful. And I really appreciated what you said, that every member of the church should have an equal way they enter the church and they experience it. And it absolutely should not be that, certain of our neighbors are being part of the community in different ways. So I really appreciate it. I think this is a fantastic design. Again, like the previous applicant, for this one even more, I'm not even sure why we're looking at this. I mean, this should just be approved as is. I think it's essential. And in my mind, this is not even like up for question. And I think you all have done a fantastic job. Thank you for fundraising you did. Thank you for all you do for the community. It's a real pleasure to meet you. And again, I apologize that you have to go through our process, but I think this is a fantastic design. I don't see any issues with it, and we should get this done as soon as possible. I mean, I would even, and maybe Commissioner Nash, if we wanted to talk about this later, but I feel like we need to tell HPO staff that they can't be, kind of even slightly holding this up or having anything with it. This needs to go through. as soon as possible. So yeah, those are my comments. Thank you again for coming. Again, apology that you have to, but it's great meeting you. And yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful church, and so happy you're doing this.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you. Sorry about the fireworks. I do not know what the deal is with Zoom that you do like double thumbs up and you get fireworks.
if you do like the updated setting thing, if you do certain hand gestures, it like will do hearts and things and all of the sorts. And yes, some of my colleagues at my real job figured that out in a somewhat interesting manner.
Yeah, sorry, that was a little embarrassing. Anyway, go ahead. But thank you, Soleil. It must have been fireworks for what you said.
Well, I second everything Swale said. I appreciate, you've knowing that your community and everybody in all abilities should have equal access to accessing or getting into your facility. I was sold when you didn't have the switchbacks in the ramp and you found a way of doing it without switchbacks, because I hate those. It's just, I think everybody who goes to architecture school, and I also Lou thought that was great that you brought up the fact that the architect who did this didn't really go to architecture school. There was a time in DC where you could just sit for the test and pass it without going to school. Did that.
I don't even know if they had a
I didn't
test
do that.
then.
But true story. There's a lot of buildings that are done by architects
Yeah.
that were not formerly schools in the District of Columbia. But I think that everybody that goes to architecture and design school or engineering school should be experiencing the built environment in a wheelchair, because they wouldn't design half the things that they do. To echo Swale's point about expediting this through the HPO process, additionally, at the same time, if you guys need to go through the public space committee, let's get that letter done too and pass that at our full commission vote, so that you're not having to wait on us for that.
Appreciate that.
Because again, my neighbor for the longest time was Judy Human, the mother of this ADA rights, and who fought so hard for so many things. And all she wanted to do was take a bus. And they were like, we'll get you a Cadillac. And she's like, no, I just want to take a bus. And I don't want to be a fire hazard. And in that spirit of everything that she's inspired and everything she accomplished and inspires me to this day, like, yes, we should not have to have people spend more money on ADA accessibility to institutions such as churches and communities. So I apologize for taking now more time of yours, but I appreciate your time and your leveling up of the importance of this project for your community and our community in general. So thank you all.
Thank you. I will say we got a little pushback from Anne.
Yep.
The preservationists maybe we've reached a tipping point, right? It used to be the making accessibility was for the few people who were the exceptions to the rule, right? And preservationists are willing to make accommodations in the requirements for accessibility. She suggested a steeper ramp. She suggested, the lift, code modifications that would allow us to do something that was less impactful. But we've reached the critical mass where, there's so many people who have a variety of mobility issues that, something like this is really the only solution. Anything where you're putting a sign up and telling people to go to the back door, should not happen. Yeah.
No, nobody should ever be othered based on their mobility issues, and we should do our best to accommodate, and putting them in the back door is not the best that we can do at this time. Right. So thank you for acknowledging that we've reached a tipping point. I agree.
So I see Commissioner Prinzo, and then are there committee members here?
Swale, if you want to go ahead first, you can.
Oh no, okay. I'll just quickly make a comment that I quickly wanted to make, which was, if we're the ANC, so we're not experts in historic preservation. I mean, some of us might be, and like Commissioner Paggett has engineering expertise, but we're here to do what's best for the community. So I feel like if you're getting pushback from someone, we're the ones that should be pushing back on that pushback as well. So yeah, please, I would love to include that type of stuff too in the resolution, Commissioner Nash. That's all I wanted to say. You can go ahead, Commissioner Minson.
Adam?
I was gonna essentially say the same thing. I am in the disabled community. I am extremely low vision. I mean, I can walk and do everything else, but it took me 11 years to get a driver's license. So I really do appreciate that you are taking time to think about the others, quote unquote, because a lot of times it wasn't thought of for me, even at my age. And I'm not that old, despite what other people might say. I do want to stress that I'm a little disappointed in HPO for pushing back on it and even suggesting a steeper ramp, because as far as I know, with gravity and wheels and steeper ramps, it's not really a good mix, especially when you're trying to run out of a place in case of an emergency. So I would agree with Swale that we should put something in the resolution that pushing back on an ADA compliant thing is really like not appropriate in my personal opinion.
Are there community members here who have questions or wish to make comments?
Rick, did you say community members? Sorry.
Yes. Hi,
Yeah.
Connie.
Sorry, I thought you said
Committee. Yeah.
community members, right, Rick?
That's correct. Hi, Connie.
Hi, I am Connie Pendleton. I live across the street from the church on the other side of Lowell Street. And I've always loved this church. I actually went to nursery school in the basement long before Kinderhouse was there, when it was the Lowell Street school. And my mom, who is a Cleveland Park resident, has taken yoga classes in the church. And I appreciate so much the very dedicated congregation and all the volunteers who work on the gardens and everything else. So I support the church very much in what it wants to do, because I think their heart is absolutely in the right place. And of course, appreciate making the building accessible. I was glad to have the opportunity yesterday this weekend, I bumped into the architect and members of the church who gave me a little background. And my one question really is just about landscaping, which we talked about this weekend. And just because a lot of the mature green shrubs, and there's a beautiful holly tree and the cedar tree, a lot will be removed. And I am glad the cedar tree there'll be an effort to preserve that. But I do hope that funds will be dedicated and effort will be put into landscaping, I guess, between the sidewalk on Lowell and the new ramp, because it has been very nice to have all that green for lots of people, for noise, for the creatures that, depend on them, and just visually, aesthetically. So that was really my comment. In the drawing, it's only between the two main entrances, but right now there is a yew and other shrubs on the right side of the right entrance. So I just hope that that will also be landscaped with sort of shrubs. And I also, as a resident of the historic neighborhood in Cleveland Park, really appreciate that people aren't just building whatever they want whenever they want. I appreciate that there is that thoughtful discussion among different constituencies, and that there still are people who care about the just beauty, architectural beauty of historic buildings. So thank you to the folks who chime in on that. And I thank you for continuing to have these discussions. I think it's only good can come from it.
Thanks very much. Are there other neighbors and community members who have a question or a comment? Going once, twice. Okay, thanks very much for the presentation, for the background, and the thinking that the church community has done, and of course for the community comment as well. I would echo lot of what has been said here. I mean, first of all, this is a really thoughtful presentation, and I appreciate all of the thinking and planning and consultation that has gone into it by the church, by its architect, and clearly in looking at sort of the early iterations of this has been a process that has been ongoing for several years, and I think it's been worth it. This church, despite, or maybe I should say because of the fact that the architect was not a licensed or didn't go to architecture school, it is one of the more beautiful and I think central buildings in our community and in the historic district. And I think the plan you've come up with is sensitive to that, and perhaps because of your objective both of maintaining the window the light, and not wanting to disturb the utilities by pulling the ramp out rather than making it flush with the church. I think it emphasizes the church and minimizes the impact of the ramp. But as Ms. Pendleton says, the church has a long history of gardening and landscaping, and I think that will also be key to making sure that this project is harmonious, not only with the church design, but with the landscape and the neighborhood, while very importantly providing the accessibility and equal access that the church and I think the community all desire. So thanks very much. We will be putting together a resolution unless we hear a lot of other feedback from the community, particularly of a concerned nature. I expect we'll put this on the consent calendar at our upcoming meeting. And so would like again to thank the presenters as well as the neighbors for being part of this presentation tonight.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
Okay.
for giving us this time.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Connie, too, for your comments.
Yes.
Okay, let me just ask if there is any other business before the committee. These were the only two items on the agenda for tonight, but does anyone else have any issue to raise? Okay, well, again, thank you, everybody. And if we could have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, and good night.